In the quiet, dimly lit waiting area of Redwood City Airport, a small regional hub nestled in a sleepy corner of the state, Officer Thomas Miller leaned back in his chair, flipping through a worn tabloid magazine. The fluorescent lights buzzed, faintly overhead, casting a sterile glow over the linoleum floors and outdated furniture. Miller, a middle-aged man with a graying beard and sharp, suspicious eyes, was bored. His shift at the airport security office had been uneventful, as it often was in a place that primarily serviced short interstate flights and the occasional private jet. The monotony was broken only by the occasional traveler who caught his attention, usually for all the wrong reasons. "Tom, take a look at this," Officer Frank Stone, Miller's younger partner, said with a low chuckle, his voice tinged with a mix of amusement and curiosity. Stone, a lanky man in his late 20s with a boyish grin, gestured toward the large glass doors that separated their cramped security office from the waiting area. Miller followed his gaze, his eyes landing on a young woman seated in a plush, leather chair, her presence striking an odd contrast to the airport's utilitarian ambiance. The woman was black, her skin a rich brown that glowed softly under the artificial lights. Her black hair was neatly tied back in a sleek bun, and she wore a tailored black blazer paired with matching straight-leg pants, an ensemble that radiated understated elegance. A sleek metal watch adorned her wrist, catching the light with every subtle movement, and her fingers sparkled with rings embedded with gemstones that gleamed expensively. At her feet sat a minimalist black leather handbag, its quality unmistakable even to someone like Miller, who knew little about high fashion but could recognize wealth when he saw it. She was engrossed in her laptop, her fingers poised over the keyboard, her focus unbroken by the quiet hum of the airport around her. "Well, well," Miller said, folding the tabloid and setting it down with a deliberate thud. His eyes narrowed as he studied her, a familiar edge of disdain creeping into his expression. "Looks like someone's lost. What's she doing in a place like this, dressed like that?" His tone carried a mix of annoyance and suspicion, as if her presence alone was an affront to the natural order of things. Redwood City Airport wasn't the kind of place that attracted passengers who looked like they belonged on the pages of a fashion magazine. It was a functional, no-frills facility, its waiting area often empty save for the occasional weary traveler or local pilot. To Miller, who had patrolled these halls for over 15 years, the airport was his domain, a place where he wielded authority with unchecked confidence, particularly over those who didn't fit his narrow definition of normal. And this woman, with her polished appearance and air of sophistication, was anything but normal in his eyes. "She looks like she stepped out of a photo shoot," Stone remarked, his voice a mix of admiration and confusion. "That watch, those clothes, bet they cost more than our patrol car." He leaned forward, resting his elbows on the desk, his curiosity piqued. "Doesn't matter," Miller said, standing up and adjusting his duty belt, the weight of his gun and handcuffs a familiar comfort. "Magazine or not, she's out of place here. Let's find out what she's up to." His lips curled into a smirk that held no warmth, only a predatory anticipation. To Miller, this was an opportunity to break the monotony of his shift, to assert his authority over someone who, in his mind, didn't belong. Stone hesitated for a moment, his eyes flickering with uncertainty, but he followed Miller's lead, as he often did. The two officers stepped out of the security office, their boots echoing on the linoleum as they approached the waiting area with deliberate strides. The woman, Maya Hayes, though they didn't know her name yet, remained focused on her laptop, seemingly oblivious to their approach. The soft tapping of her keyboard mingled with the low hum of the air conditioner, the only sounds in the otherwise silent space. Miller stopped a few feet from her, crossing his arms and tilting his head slightly, his posture radiating authority. Stone stood just behind him, his expression a mix of curiosity and unease. Maya, sensing their presence, looked up from her screen. Her dark eyes were calm but sharp, assessing the officers with a quiet confidence that caught Miller off guard. He had expected nervousness, perhaps fear, emotions he was accustomed to eliciting from those he deemed suspicious. Instead, her gaze was steady, almost challenging. "Good evening," Miller said, his voice low and laced with condescension. "I'm Officer Miller and this is Officer Stone, Redwood City Airport Police." You don't look like a regular around here." Maya closed her laptop with a deliberate, graceful motion, placing it on the small table beside her. "Good evening, officers," she replied, her voice deep and clear, carrying an authority that made Miller shift uncomfortably. "I'm just waiting for someone to pick me up. I'm catching up on some work in the meantime." Her tone was polite but firm, leaving no room for misinterpretation. "Pick up," Miller repeated, stepping closer, his eyes scanning the empty waiting area. "At this hour, most flights are done for the night." His gaze lingered on her watch, then drifted to her handbag, his suspicion growing. "You waiting for a private jet, I assume. With that outfit and all that jewelry, you don't look like you're flying commercial." Maya's expression remained composed, though a flicker of irritation crossed her face. "Yes, I'm waiting for a private plane," she said evenly. "Someone will be here soon to take me to my next destination." "Private jet," Stone echoed, his eyebrows shooting up. He glanced at Miller, who was now openly scrutinizing Maya's belongings, his eyes narrowing at the sight of her expensive accessories. "Must be nice," Miller said, his tone dripping with sarcasm. "That watch, that bag, those aren't cheap. We have to be careful around here, you know. Small airport like this, we get all sorts of people passing through. Gotta make sure everything's legal." He leaned in slightly, his smile more a challenge than a gesture of friendliness. "I understand your job, officer," Maya said, her voice still calm but carrying a hint of steel. "I assure you, everything I'm doing here is legal. I haven't done anything wrong." "Oh, we believe you," Miller said, though his tone suggested otherwise. He flashed a disarming smile that didn't reach his eyes. "But protocol's protocol. Rich folks flying private jets sometimes carry things they don't want to declare, or money from questionable sources." He leaned closer, his voice dropping. "Mind showing us your ID, and maybe a quick look in that bag? Just a routine check." Maya's jaw tightened, a cold anger rising within her. She recognized the implications in his words, the thinly veiled prejudice that colored his assumptions. Asking for identification was one thing, but demanding to search her bag without probable cause or a warrant was a clear overreach, an abuse of power dressed up as procedure. "I'll show you my ID," she said, her voice steady as she reached for her wallet. "But you don't have the right to search my bag without a warrant or probable cause." Miller's smile faded, replaced by a sneer. "Oh, really? A lawyer, huh?" He straightened, his tone mocking. "In our territory, we decide what's probable cause. And your fancy get-up at this hour? That's reason enough." He reached for her bag, his hand hovering over it with intent. "Don't touch my bag," Maya said, her voice sharp and authoritative as she placed a protective hand on it. Her eyes locked onto Miller's, unflinching. Miller's expression darkened, his annoyance morphing into anger. "You want to play tough, huh? Frank, look at this. She thinks she can tell us how to do our job." He turned to Stone, who shifted, uncomfortably but nodded in agreement. Maybe she needs a lesson in respecting authority. Stone, emboldened by Miller's lead, chimed in. "Yeah, you'd better cooperate, miss. We can take you to a private room for a proper search if you keep this up." The threat hung heavy in the air, laced with menace. Maya felt a surge of anger and violation, her heart pounding as she realized the officers weren't just conducting a routine check. They were deliberately harassing her, using their authority to intimidate and demean her based on her appearance and race. But she refused to let fear take hold. Instead, a cold determination settled over her. "I've made myself clear," she said, her voice low and steady, carrying a weight that silenced the officers for a moment. "You're abusing your power, and you will face consequences for it." Miller and Stone exchanged a glance, then burst into laughter, the sound echoing harshly in the empty waiting area. "Consequences?" Miller said, wiping a tear from his eye. "Who do you think you are talking to us like that? Nobody's made us pay in all our years here, especially not someone like you." His words dripped with prejudice, the insinuation clear. "My name is Chloe Davis," Maya said, her voice cutting through their laughter like a blade. The officers froze, their amusement evaporating. "My brother is a lawyer, and my father is the Attorney General of the United States. The air in the waiting area seemed to thicken, the hum of the air conditioner suddenly deafening in the silence that followed. Miller's face, flushed with glee moments before, drained of color. Stone stood rigid, his eyes wide with panic. The name Chloe Davis didn't immediately register, but the title, Attorney General, hit them like a sledgehammer. Attorney General? Miller stammered, his voice barely above a whisper. He fumbled for his phone, his hands trembling, as he typed frantically, searching for confirmation. The information was public. Stephen Davis, the Attorney General, had a daughter named Chloe. As the screen lit up with her name and photo, Miller's face grew paler, his breath shallow. Stone muttered, "Oh God," his voice shaking as he looked to Miller for guidance, but Miller was frozen, his bravado replaced by raw fear. Chloe stood calmly, her gaze unwavering as she watched the officers unravel. "I'm sorry, Miss Davis," Miller stammered, his voice now a pathetic plea. "We didn't know. It was a misunderstanding. Just doing our job." "No harm meant," Stone added, his words tumbling out in a rush. "Just following protocol. Please, forgive us." Chloe didn't respond. Instead, she pulled her phone from her blazer pocket and dialed her father. The call connected after 2 rings, and Stephen Davis's deep, authoritative voice came through. "Chloe, you're there?" "Hi, Dad," she said, her voice steady but tinged with restrained anger. "I'm here, but I've run into some trouble." Over the next few minutes, she recounted the incident with precision, detailing the officers' racially charged comments, their unwarranted demand to search her bag, and their mocking laughter when she revealed her identity. Her father listened silently, his anger palpable even through the phone. When she finished, he asked, "Are you safe, Chloe?" "Yes," she replied, her eyes fixed on Miller and Stone, who stood petrified. "They're right here in front of me." "Stay where you are," Stephen Davis said firmly. "I'm sending someone from the Inspector General's office to investigate. I'll also contact the Redwood City Police Chief and the mayor. You did well, honey. I'm proud of you." As the call ended, Miller and Stone's faces were ashen, their futures crumbling before their eyes. Within 20 minutes, a black sedan arrived, followed by a Redwood City Police patrol car. Agents from the Department of Justice's office of Inspector General stepped out, their expressions stern as they approached Chloe with respect and professionalism. The police chief, red-faced with anger and embarrassment, ordered Miller and Stone to surrender their badges and weapons, suspending them indefinitely pending a federal investigation. The investigation was swift and thorough, overseen by the Attorney General's office. Chloe's testimony, supported by security footage and accounts from other airport staff, painted a damning picture of systemic bias and misconduct. Miller and Stone were dismissed from the force, their records permanently marked for abuse of power and racial bias, ensuring they could never serve as officers again. The case garnered national attention, sparking discussions about police reform and accountability. For Chloe, the outcome was bittersweet. While justice was served, the incident underscored the privilege her father's position afforded her, a privilege many others lacked. She channeled her experience into advocacy, becoming a vocal proponent for racial justice and police reform, using her story to highlight the pervasive issue of bias in law enforcement. Her father, Attorney General Davis, used the case to push for broader reforms, ensuring it served as a wake-up call for departments nationwide. The incident at Redwood City Airport became a powerful reminder that no one is above accountability, and that justice, when backed by truth and determination, can prevail, even in the most unlikely of places.